Hello everybody, Bradley Sward, the PacProf here, and today I'm going to show off a project I've been working on for the past month or so. So I'm taking a course called Python, Introduction to Python Programming at the University of Illinois Springfield. So I'm learning all sorts of new facets to the Python programming language. And my major project is, as you see here, a Boxxle game for the Game Boy, ported over into Python using Pygame and sprinkle with a little JSON on top of it. So let's show off what the game actually does, and then we'll push forward into the presentation of how I solved that problem. So Boxxle, it's a 34-year-old game at this point. My goodness, it's still sadly not as old as I am. And so Game Boy, came out for the Game Boy. I know there's like a Link's homebrew edition of it. This thing's been made to death, and this is a part of what I do in, as you guys know in other videos, part of the classes I teach over at College of DuPage. So apparently you're trying to catch a love interest. There has to be a story, right? So anyway, it's a dumb story. So anyway, so here you go. You're a guy. You are trapped in this puzzle trying to push blocks around from a starting position to a goal state. And there's nothing you can do if you push blocks into a corner, or you can't pull the blocks. I don't know why not, but you can definitely push them. You can't push a block if there's another block in front of it. There has to be an empty space, and you can just move around, and that's pretty much the whole goal of the game. I'm going to do the first 5 levels of the game. This video goes on forever, and the guy isn't very good at this, whoever made this video. That was level 1. Here we go, level 2 coming up, here you go. So I'm pretty much going to be making my own version of the first 5 levels. So let's take a look at what I did, starting with the GameMaker software suite. So this is the software, GameMaker Studio version 2 point something. There recently was a major overhaul to the system, so I'm just getting used to the interface. I'm going to need it for fall to be able to do a lot of the stuff we've been able to do, but thankfully it's mostly just a user interface overhaul. Most of the underlying coding and stuff like that is pretty much the same. So I'm not going to get into any of the details. You can watch many videos, either my videos or other people's videos, to get a feel for how GameMaker actually works. But the major topics that I'm going to cover, or at least I'm going to be using from the GameMaker software suite to create my own engine, is basically over here in the resources section. I'm going to be creating, I already did create a bunch of sprites. At the time I hadn't created them, of course, but over time I created them. Oops, yeah, feedback. They always want my feedback. So here we go with that. So there's my sprites, and then the objects of my scene are going to be using those sprites. And then the objects, that's where all the activity happens, all the events. If I were to hit the enter key, or if I were to move the box around, or how do I know if the game has ended or whatnot, that's where these activities would go inside of GameMaker. And then of course the major part here are the rooms, or the scenes. This is the main menu. This is like the background, like the buttons will go over this. The buttons will be objects and not just hard baked into the scene. And then each level, there we go, each level, as you see, is already fully integrated, and using the level editor, which we'll get into in a couple minutes, we'll create the Python code needed to run through everything else. So here's level 2, here's level 3, here's level 4, and here's level 5. So I say I'm not going to discuss much about that, but what I'm really involved in is this. docs.yoyogames.com is where all the documentation for all the functionality of GameMaker lies. So I pretty much went through in my first step here of creating the engine, of just kind of recreating almost everything you see here. And Python has a thing called properties, which is kind of amazing because it pretty much gives you, it feels a lot like GameMaker when you're writing Python code using this engine that I'm creating. So it's actually pretty cool. But I didn't do all of it. There's no way I'm going to write the entire engine. I just did enough to get what I needed out of the Boxxle game. So here, like if I just, so I'm going to say, if you need to look up how any of the engine worked, just go to Yo-Yo Games and you pretty much get a good understanding, because I was very, usually pretty thorough with this kind of stuff. So I wanted to know, distance to object. I created that function and it works pretty much the same way. just like if I'm in an object and I like how close am I to some other object, it'll return the distance. It'll just use the the square of the distances of the two directions to make it to find out how far it is from point A to point B, and so forth and so on. And also, like I said, these are all those. Go back here. Yep, there we go. These were all the basics for the movement, and then I also created for all the animations. You don't get to see all the animation engine in its full glory, but I also recreated. Have to do all this stuff, all of this kind of stuff to sprite offsets and alphas and rotations and so forth. A lot of that is also created, and that comes along with bounding boxes, because we do need bounding boxes when we're trying to push blocks around to determine if a block is able to be pushed or not. So anyway, so that's the basics of GameMaker Suite, and now we'll talk about my black triangle, getting a Pong game working using this game engine that I was talking about. Alright, so here is my fundamental code for the first game engine. I was just getting something, just getting a game engine going. I made a game called Pong, way back from 1973. Pong is like the hello world of game development, just because you need to, get a pixel going on the screen, get graphics, get collisions, handle all sorts of little tiny events, and it's not really complicated compared to a lot of today's, video games, a lot of the major stuff being done these days. So as you see over here, you kind of see the code that I was working through. This is game code. Here's a text box, here's a paddle, this is a base class for paddles, here's the left paddle, which is human controlled, here's the right paddle that's AI controlled, here's the ball, a lot of code for the ball, and just so forth and so on, get the game going. I say, without an engine, there really isn't too much to go, too much to make Pong. However, it takes a lot on the engine side to make that little thing going. And I've heard the term black triangle when it comes to this, because especially with video game companies, you show off to people who don't know tech, like, here's a black triangle on the screen, it took us 3 weeks to get that. And they go, really? What's up with that? And you go, well, do you realize, if we got that black triangle going, it shouldn't take very long to get an entire everything else in our game going as well, because that triangle is going through processing and all sorts of all sorts of data massaging to get that thing on the screen to be fully shaded, add mip maps and all sorts of other crazy nonsense. So it's like, it's not just putting a pixel on the screen, and the same thing goes with here. It's not just putting the game on the screen, it's getting everything, all the foundation ready to push forward. And once I had this, it was so nice, because the game itself just came together so much simpler, so much easier, because the architecture was sound on the foundation. So I didn't really have too much work to do. So I said, this was the game side work, and then here is all the engine stuff. And notice, like I said, Python has a thing called a property, which allows me to use a function as if it were a variable. So I was able to set up all of these, if you remember back a couple minutes ago to the documentation on yo-yo games, all of this stuff is similar, if not identical, to the to the functionality that GameMaker has, and I can tie these gets and sets to the direction, and it's just automatic. I can, that function gets called automatically, which is pretty cool. So anyway, so there's all these extra functions that I was creating just to make it all work, keyboard checks and movement codes, and here's all the gets and sets and alarms and all the bounding box stuff, friction and directions and speeds, all automatic. Once I set a speed, everything just moves automatically. The hard part for this was getting the bounding box to actually move with the object, and possibly that's part of the reason why I have such slowdown in my game, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, so let's see. Let me go over here. We can run this. I don't know where it's going to run to. Here we go. Cool. On the screen. Hopefully you can see it. Maybe there'll be an issue, but maybe not. But there's nothing I can do. Oh, I gotta play the actual game. So there we go. So there's my AI paddle moving around. There's me moving around. Oops, there we go. And I put a little red line on the ball just so I could test out, because the code for where the ball bounces all depends on where the paddle is in relation to the ball. And the AI is there. It's not very difficult. I didn't, I wasn't intending to make a challenging game. I just wanted to test everything out. But once I score 3 goals, or he scores, it scores 3 goals, game's over. So there you go. So that's Pong in a nutshell. So now that I have the engine, and now that I have my level editor going, now we're good to go, and we can start putting together what we need to get going. So I'm going to come back and talk about the game editor level editor right now. Okay, so I used GameMaker to help me with the level editor because one thing Python doesn't do very well, at least most languages at its core don't do, is just give you a nice graphical interface to work from. So it's like, instead of wasting my time printing out every little detail for every room and have to go back and just painstakingly change everything, this is really nice because I can just just click and drag and create a level using the graphics and using everything that I'm going to be using in the game. So notice, like, all of these are objects, even the little, the HUD text here, my guy, the box, all the walls, even the background and the goals. Every single thing is a graphic, is an object in this scene. And if this were GameMaker, I would just write the code directly in here, and honestly, it's a little easier, especially since the engine's already created for me in Sound, but that's okay. So, but the thing was to create the Python code from what you see on the screen. And notice, like I said, this level first, this is there so that all the necessary stuff that I need to to have the file generator open up and get ready to do its job. And what happens is every 60th of a second there's a game frame, and every 60th of a second it goes to the new room, whatever this is, the new level, and then it basically spits out everything to a file and then moves on to the next frame or next room, and then moves on and moves on and moves on until it can't find any more rooms, and it all shoots it into one file, which I'll show you in a minute here. But the code inside of the file creator object, it's very rudimentary. Let's see how big I can make this. So basically this is setting up if it's this first level room, I need all that stuff at the front, all the imports. And I say this was kind of a work in progress. I kind of I had to create the editor while I was creating the game, and then I had to go back and tinker on both ends to make everything work together. Because here's my background and my box and my goal and my hero and my wall and my image and everything else that I need. I need to import Pygame, and say you'll see that the Python code looks exactly like it's supposed to. And then for every level, here's my class definition. Here's my my constructor initialization function. Here it calls up and calls the room, because every room derives from a base class room, and then everything else is using my engine. Here there's an instance register function, and inside of that it sets up here, for every background, put a background. For every wall, create a wall. Put in the X, put in the Y. Same with boxes and goals and heroes and the images, and then a few other little odds and ends. The caption title. What is the title bar for my room? What is it going to say? And so forth and so on. And then this just code here. All I'm of course running this all out to a file, so you get what you get there. And then of course just go to the next room if you can. Otherwise, end the program, because the only point of this is just to spit out all the code. And here is the level itself put into Python. Notice it's nothing crazy. It's just brute force, put every object into my room. So like I said, notice here is all the imports and all that I need to get the game going. No comments are really needed, since this is perfectly generated file. And then like I said, everything needs is just an init file, which is really cool the way the engine works. Like once you get these objects registered with your game scene, the engine takes care of everything else automatically and works its way back to the other code, which we'll talk about in the last section. So there's level 1, here's level 2, and just keep on going, level 3, level 4, and level 5. Okay, cool. So, and of course, like I said, this is great because you could just create 130,000 levels and it would just generate all the code automatically for you and just kind of work, which is really cool. The whole point of a level editor. It doesn't have to be fancy, it just has to get its job done. Okay, so next part here, I'm going to show you guys the actual game, everything together, using the level editor, using the engine, and creating my own game code on top of it. All right, and here it is, the culmination of all the hard work. So the main function, the main code is only like 10 lines of code, or technically 5 lines of code, and it just initialize Pygame, get my little game object going. Game is the major arcing class on top of that works with everything else in our entire game, and then set up the first room, which is a splash screen. So I push my way around. This goes in the title bar, and then go to that first room, and then I got to run the game loop. And once I run the game loop, everything else just automatically works. So I go, so if that's the code just to get things going, then they say everything else is a matter of just setting up all the rooms and all the objects in the rooms and just making them interact. So here's my splash screen room, and all it does is just initialize, sets up a delay image, and you'll see that's my picture of my kid, and just set the set the caption, set the title bar, and this delay image is just a game object, and it's just derived from a master game object where all the automaticness of everything is taken care of, and it's just a matter of programming in everything else. Just like I say, just like GameMaker, there's a step event, there's steps and draws and collision events and alarms that are pretty much identical to the architecture of GameMaker. Once again, I'm not going to get into the whole architecture of what I've been doing, but it's very similar to that. So here's the constructor for that. Set up a sound, set up sound volumes, get that going, and then just wait 3 seconds for it to go to the next room. So that's, that's the way the, whatchamacallit, that's the splash screen. So then when you get rid of that, then the main menu pops up, and we'll run the main. Well, I'm going to run the whole game as the last part of this, but notice there's quite a bit more code because there's a lot more going on in my main menu. So the main menu has buttons, so I'm setting up buttons. I had to create my own button GUI class, which wasn't that difficult. Just setting up, using the animation part of the engine to just, when I mouse over or I move my, button, or I press enter, or I press up or down, different activities occur. So as it's maintaining all of this, if I press down or I press up, the active button changes. If I hit escape, then I'll move over to, move down to the quit game button. And if I hit enter, whatever, I'll just perform a callback on whatever function it is I need to call for the button that is active, and so forth and so on. And then the one thing is I use JSON to be able to handle your personal best scores, and it maintains your best 3 number of steps and your best 3 times for each of the 5 levels in your game. So this code just, the personal best is a little placard that comes up on the screen when you have when one of the game buttons is active, and you can see your best times and scores. And let's see, what else do we have here? Just here's the button class itself, a begin step event, an active callback, draw event. Everything does its job as it's supposed to. And then the callback functions themselves are really simple. You just go ahead and you just go to that room, as we showed the code earlier in the previous section, so you don't have to worry about that. So level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And that's the code to make that work. And then you play the game, and it's like each level is completely independent of one another, because the boxes and the all that, they don't care about anything else about being pushed around. It's just a matter of when you beat the level, what do you do about that? Which level are you in, so that you can update the correct level information for your best scores and so forth and so on, so that you can so you can maintain individual information for that. And we'll usually start our way backwards because the room is generally at the bottom, but I guess it's not this time. Where is everything here? I guess the rooms are in the Boxxle level stuff that I showed earlier, but the objects themselves are in separate files. So I say here's an image. This is just a general image for like a background image or something like that. And here's the walls. I say the walls, the goals, and the backgrounds don't do anything more than just sit there. It's basically everything else, like especially the player and the and the boxes get moved around. Everything else doesn't need to really do anything more than just exist and just have a tie-in, just be derived from game object, and have a class called goal and a named class, so that it's easier to determine what object I'm colliding with, or what object is at a certain point in space. So then I say, well, as I'm playing the game, there's a little HUD object going on that shows off, what the current time is, because time is always elapsing, of course, and how many steps you've taken. That's in the upper left-hand corner, and that that all is taken care of. Basically, there's an update function that passes in like what information does it need to draw. If I had more time and more ability to push things forward, I'd use a completely different architecture. I'd use more of an observer pattern than just calling an update function on something. But just patterns, anti-patterns, whatever. It all works out. So there's the HUD, and then this all comes up. This is the solved placard. This all pops up when you beat the level, because it shows you what your time was and how you ranked. Like if you've played the game 10 times, oh, this was your 7th of 10 when it comes to number of steps, or your 7th of 10 when it comes to how much elapsed time. And then this thing waits 5 seconds before heading you back to the game menu. So I said the box doesn't really do much in itself either. It just has an alarm in there so that after it gets pushed a certain amount of game frames, that it just stops. The movement stops. Same with the hero. Of course, the hero's got a whole ton going for him. He's got animations for standing and for pushing, or for walking, if you want to think of it that way too, and all sorts of other stuff that needs to be indicated. Like something like this, if the level's been solved, we're not going to let the player move again, because that would set off other things that we don't want to worry about. So like this, when it's like Frogger, when a character moves from square to square, then you get one step, and then we got to stop them from movement, so that you got to wait for the player to hit the key again in order to move to the next square. And drawing the hero isn't as easy as anything else. You draw the hero here, and then you draw the HUD, and then you set the visibility for the solved level placard, and so forth and so on. And once again, if I say with more time, I would have set this up with different objects working together, but got it working. And the first rule of game programming is, got it working, don't touch it. It's usually how things go, at least my experience, especially near the end of a project. Handle win condition. This determines if when you do win the game, this sets up the JSON stuff and sets up the file. I'll have to find the file in a minute here, but there you go. There's everything setting up all the records for all the levels. And then the end step event, what are we doing? Oh, this is where we actually check to see if every goal object is touching a box. So, and basically that's how you know you've won. When every goal is touching a box, when player has stopped movement and the box has stopped movement as well. And then the step event, there's a lot of code here for just moving the character around left, right, up, or down. So this is just checking basically if there's no wall in front of me in whatever direction I want to go, or no box or anything, I can just go there. But otherwise, if there is a box in front of me, but there's a wall 2 steps ahead, then I can push the block. And it just does the code for each of the 4 directions. So here is the JSON. There's nothing much going on because this will be populated as we go. So there's 5 total levels to my game. So here's 5 total records. Those of you know how to read JSON files. And then the level itself is named the same as the name of the actual room object type. So level 1 object, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And then inside of here, we will maintain the differences in how many steps did it take you to complete each level, and then how long did it take in elapsed time. So it will keep track of every single time you've done it, beaten the game. And I didn't keep track of like exact what time did you like time in real life, like was it 12:22 p.m. when you did things or whatever. But just the number of steps, the number of levels, and then you can take these little lists, sort them out, and then you have your your best 3 from there, or your best 5, or whatever you would ever want to do. Since you're maintaining all the data, you can do whatever you need to do forevermore with that. So this will populate over time. I just wanted to show that because this is a major component of the requirements for this program. So and you'll notice it immediately when you run the game and you beat a level. It'll come back because the main menu shows you basically a graphical representation of this JSON file. Okay, so here is the culmination of all the hard work, the game in its glory. I'm only going to play a few of the levels, so and I promise to try to shut up, but I'll only talk when it's necessary, but who knows the way I am. So let's play the game and have some fun.
Hello.
Apparently the slowdown has been caused by everything running at once, running Python, running Camtasia. Camtasia is going on as well. personal best showing up on the screen. Let's try out a different level. Epic music. I tried to find the most epic music for a block pushing game I could find that was free. There we go. 50 steps, 55.49 seconds. Same thing go. Keeps track of that. Yay! That's me, level 4. So just to show one more time, just sorts everything. Like I said, I have to hit escape if I break the game. Like, in this case, I push a block into the corner. Nothing I can do about this. Oh, man. So I gotta hit escape to back it out. Yeah. There we go. Well, let's just try to equal level one more time. Let's see what we get. Let's see if I can keep the personal record. I think the record is just based on how much bad I feel like it. Trying to make this thing work. Come on! There's really not much going on in the game, so it's like, why should we slow down at all? I'm trying to run 20 frames per second. I can't even do that much. Of course, somebody's going to tell me I'm doing it wrong. Can I make it in a close? I might try for steps, but I definitely will maybe not. So 36 steps. First place I got it. There you have it. Steps are tied, but it maintains, and I promise you, it maintains best records first, second, and third place for everyone with 5 blocks. So there you have it. There's my Boxxle game. If you want a copy of it, just email me, or I'll find a way to put it onto something. I used to be able to Dropbox it, but maybe now to GitHub it or something ridiculous. But I can find a way to get you the code if you want to see it, and want to tinker with it, and I don't know, and just have some fun playing around Pygame. Alright, so thanks for hanging out with me for about a half hour. My goodness, this took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take to show off, but thanks again. So if you want to comment, feel free to comment. If you want to find the code, and it already hasn't been posted through GitHub or Dropbox or something like that, just let me know and I'll find a way to get it to you. Once again, thanks for hanging out with me, and now I can get back to, summer's over, and get back to making some GameMaker videos that you guys probably want. So once again, also, if you want some GameMaker videos, comment down below and I will get on it. Thanks guys, have a great day.